Hello, welcome back. So today in this video, I'm going to talk about portrait photographer, which is Dana Lixenberg. Dana Lixenberg portrait at the Musée Européen de la Photographie. The exhibition is called American Images and it's until the 24th of May in Paris. So Dana Lixenberg has a little bit of a story about this because I didn't know this photographer at all. I discovered just browsing Instagram. Maybe Instagram knew that I was planning to go a trip to Paris. And I discovered this exhibition at the Maison Européenne and I definitely wanted to see it. It's called American Images and it was mostly portraiture. And as a portrait photographer, yes, I'm thriving. I'm thirsty for seeing other photography exhibitions. So a little bit of context about Dana Lixenberg. Dana Lixenberg is a Dutch photographer. She was born in 1964. She studied at the London College of Printing from 1984 to 1986. Then she went back to study in Holland. In 1989, she moved to New York. She did a lot of photography for a magazine, the New Yorker, the New York Times magazine, Rolling Stone. And in fact, her first portrait was for Vibe magazine, where she photographed the rapper Tupac. And I think this really developed her fame working as a freelance photographer. But the thing about Dana Lixenberg is that she photographed with a 4x5 camera. This really astounded me because I know how cumbersome these cameras are. I tried to do some project which I'm going to talk a little bit more into detail. Let's talk a little bit about her project and what she did when she was in the States. So in March 1993, a Dutch magazine called Reach Netherlands sent her to the South Central Los Angeles to document rising against the killing of Rodney King by LAPD officers. She discovered a public housing project which is called Imperial Court and she was really taken by it. So she started to photograph people for this project. This project has been spanning from 1993 and she's still working on it. But in 2015 it was published in the book. So what is this project about and what is it so impressive? This project was about connecting with people going up on Imperial Court. And what she did about this project is she photographed the parents, she photographed the children, and she photographed the children of the children. And she came back on a regular basis. She met some people. Some of the people have ended up in prison. Unfortunately, some people were dead. But the stunning thing about it is that she photographed with a 4x5 camera. So what is a 4x5 camera? If you don't know about it, it's a wooden box, basically, where you put an objective and you're going to have to use sheet film. So the film are quite big, very big negative. That's why it's called 4x5. It's 4x5 inches. What is really impressive is you can't really see much of the result. I know she was using a lot of Polaroid when you could use Polaroid 5x5 film, where you could see the result of what you wanted to take. I don't know how she's doing it now that this film doesn't exist. I'm really curious to hear that. What is really astounding with this camera, people had to collaborate with her. She couldn't just take a candid picture on the fly like you can with an iPhone or you can with a modern camera. And I think this is really outstanding because I'm really amazed how she managed to do this whole project with this camera because it's one of the most cumbersome camera. And you really have to slow down the process. But I'm going to explain to you what we can learn from her, especially using this process. I was quite moved to see I'm sharing some images that she took at Imperial Court, and it was quite moving to see recognizing some people where you could see them growing up. Also alongside Imperial Court, she did another project about the homeless shelter. Amazing portrait, giving some dignity to the people she photographed from the shelter. So for her, photography is like a slow dance, and definitely it was a slow dance. So why did she decide to shoot with a 4x5? I think she decided to use a 4x5 because she wanted to, first of all, develop a connection and slow the process. She said she wanted to adopt a relationship with the sitter, and this camera definitely invites you have to communicate. You can't just hide behind the camera. And I remember when I was starting to do portrait, I was a nervous wreck, and I was trying to hide behind the camera. I couldn't develop a connection with my sitter. I can see in the images like people were sitting like a rabbit in the lights. It just felt like that because I didn't have developed a connection. And when you see trust in an image, it's because also the photographer is trustful. There's a connection between the two. When you photograph a person, it's not like a still life. You can't just sit there, wait for things to happen. The person is not going to know what to do in front of the camera. She was less interested in what a person wants to project than what's happening at the moment she photographs them. So what can we learn from Dana Lixenberg photography? And when I'm sharing this insight, it doesn't matter if you're an amateur photographer, if you just started photography. I hope you can walk away with some great idea with these findings. So the first thing is slow down the camera on purpose. And when I talk about this, you don't necessarily have to use a 4x5. I'm just inviting you, how can we slow the process with a DSLR camera? Maybe even with your phone. Use a tripod. Because a tripod is going to slow you down. It's going to make you intentional. And maybe if you do a portrait of a person, it's going to create some curiosity. Why should you using a tripod? Oh my gosh, how long is this going to last? So you're going to have to develop a conversation. But it's, as I said, with technology, we invited to shut down our brain, to be much less active, be passive, not to think, but definitely just adding a tripod to your photography, to your camera, is going to slow you down. It's going to make you going to have to think twice. What kind of shutter speed do I want? What kind of speed do I want? What kind of exposure? What kind of ISO do I want? So I think just slowing down the process, because it's adding a certain element, because with nowadays with the camera, everything goes click, click, and we have a picture, everything, you just send it away to social media, fantastic. No, I'm not talking about creating content here. I'm talking about creating purposeful photography, purposeful portrait, where you have to make the effort to develop a connection. And I think the difference with why the portraits are different when you slow down on purpose, it's because you have, the person is not going to sit there just still. You're not photographing a still life. You're going to have to talk to the person. And when I started to do portraiture, it was a disaster, I can tell you. I love portraiture, but I didn't understand that portraiture is also a connection. You have to make a conversation, because the person on the other side facing the camera thinking, my gosh, what's going to happen? She's not telling me anything. How do I look? They're going to start to panic inside. They're going to have a voice to start to panic inside. So you have to keep them happy. You have to develop this connection. And what is great with a 4x5, because when you take the photo, you have a shutter release in the hand, you can stand next to the camera, so you can still have this conversation and decide at what moment you're going to press the shutter. But you can still do this as well with your DSLR camera. You can stand next to the camera, maybe use a shutter release and decide when to press it. Or maybe you can also keep the conversation when you're looking through the viewfinder. So it's about not expecting the other person knowing what to do, not expecting for them not to have an inner voice thinking, oh my gosh, how do I look like? What is going to look like? Not having the panic voice inside them, especially when they're standing in front of a camera. So slowing down the process, even also when you're shooting landscape, long exposure is going to bring some kind of timelessness to your images. So it's about taking more an active process. It's about taking control of what you want to do with your photography. Try to slow it down, stop rushing, stop running, stop just thinking about creating content, but be more intentional, purposeful with your photography to create something of a message. The other thing, she was stripping the background. And that's something really interesting, because when I was doing portraiture, I would think my portrait are pretty close cropped, and I was thinking I need to put more information in my picture. But this is something, she's telling us something else. It's a very interesting point of view, because it makes me think maybe what I'm doing is I can keep doing that. I don't have to say so much with my photos, because I just want to focus on the person. I want the person to have the connection with the viewer and make their own stories. It depends. If you photograph somebody in the studio, flatterness, you might just tell too many things. You might get the viewer completely lost in the image, and their focus might just tear away from the person in the image. I don't know. What do you think? Are you somebody who wants to involve a lot of environment to say something about the person you photograph, or you want something much closer so the viewer can make their own opinion and not to give too much information about this person? Very powerful in a portrait from the homeless shelter, because she photographed these people standing in a suit with a background which doesn't give us much information. So I would have never guessed that this person was a shelter. There's another photograph which I'm showing you here, and this woman, I thought she was photographed from a model from a magazine, but no, she was from a homeless shelter. Would you have ever guessed that she was from a homeless shelter? No, because the background is stripped. She's dressed differently. She gives them back some dignity. She gives them back a story, and maybe they can even project themselves into a different future. Treat everybody the same way. This is what she's doing when she's stripping away the background. She's giving a different story, and we don't know. Of course, we know the portrait of Tupac. We knew he was somebody famous, but she photographed him exactly the same way as she photographed the people. A homeless shelter project. It's just about giving back some dignity, not necessarily letting us making a story up about the person we see in the image. So she used absolutely the same light, the same ground, the same posing between famous people and the non-famous people that she photographed. We can ask ourselves, would I photograph a person differently, adding more information if she's famous? Would I photograph her differently? Would I pose her differently? Would I dehumanize a person because I know she's coming from a homeless shelter? Would we be influenced about that? So this is what she wanted to. She didn't want to be influenced by what the person was at the moment, but more about about what was happening in front of the camera. Give something back. So she gave back a lot of prints, she gave back some files, some Polaroids, and this is definitely something I invite you to do. Of course, if it's commercial work, I'm not going to talk about that. But if you do a project, which is a personal project, and you definitely want to share something, because especially a print, which is very tangible. I think nowadays we forgot the value of what a print is. We forgot the value of images on the wall. We forgot the value. We are so used to see everything through technology, to TV, but it's not something, you don't have the same connection. A print is tangible. It's something they can look at on a regular basis. It's even something from their family, a special moment in their life. And this is really about, when you do a project, give them something back, because we're talking here about a connection, a collaboration. They give you your consent, they give you something of themselves, they give you something of their story, so you have to give them something back rather than just taking an image. What do you think? How do you do that when you take a personal project, when you photograph people? So the deepest lesson that we can learn here is about what is portraiture. Portraiture is a connection. It's consent. You have to have an agreement. You can't just photograph a person if they don't want to be photographed. This is something quite a debate, quite interesting. We could have in another video. When you travel, do you take a picture, you steal a picture from a person, or you try to get their consent? And this is something that I started to do when I was photographing. I went to do a tour once in the Panier in Marseille. I asked permission from people to photograph them. Of course, I was on nerve-wracked because I knew it had to be quick. It's not something that I'm used to do, to ask permission of people. I'm usually used to people walking into the studio and photograph them, that's it. But this was really different. Yes, the trust developed very quickly. Of course, I sent them some images, but it was an amazing thing to do. And I think the portrait that you get, it's something completely different than when you try to steal an image. I don't know which side of the debate you are here, but I love travel portraiture. It's about developing a connection, learning a little bit more about the story. I'm curious to hear what's your point of view here, but I'm definitely going to continue to do this. Go beyond your comfort zone, go with a smile, and if they say no, just move on and ask for the next person. What do you think? Are you asking permission? Have you developed to do travel portraiture, or are you more someone who just tries to stand away from the scene and just look and photograph? So I greatly enjoyed the exhibition. Had a big impact on me. First of all, I am a portrait person. I love portraiture, and a portrait are really strong, powerful. Sometimes I was standing in front of it for 1 or 2 minutes. It definitely invited me to use my 4x5 camera again. I know I'm dreading it because I remember how dreadful it was. It was very difficult. So I need to find a lab in London that develops 4x5. So if you know anyone who does that, please let me know. But it's something that I want to try again. I really want to make the effort to use that camera. Wait for maybe in a few weeks. I'm going to share videos about how it's going on with my 4x5. Are you taking, I don't know, landscape travel photography with a 4x5? I would love to hear from you. Let me know in the comment how it's going on. In one of my projects, I wanted to use a 4x5 camera because at the time I was doing a master's in photography and 4x5 was very big. But for my project about women who volunteered during the Second World War, I wanted to use this camera, but it was such a challenge. First of all, the light in England, and then I was trying to shoot inside, was a disaster, and I was using slide film as well. This is even less forgiving about exposure. It was really, really hard, and asking the person to stand still for nearly 60 seconds. I'm sharing one image here. I show you. This is one portrait of Ruth Bourne, which was a volunteer with the Wrens, or the Navy, at Bletchley Park. I quite liked this portrait, but you see the light was really tricky, and it's something that was really difficult to see because I didn't have a Polaroid. I couldn't really see what I was doing. Maybe I should have looked much closer about how the light was falling on the face. But of course, I was also nerve-wracked using this camera, trying to be very quick, trying to work like a normal camera, but it's not a normal camera. So slow down, have a conversation, explain, educate the sitter, and take your time. I think it's very important. Look around the scene, what's happening in front of you, and especially how the light is falling on the person. So which of this learning are you going to apply to your photography? I'm really curious to hear. I can't wait to share more with you. I really enjoyed this exhibition. I love learning from other photographers. It's always something new to challenge us, to take us out of your comfort zone, and things I didn't really expect. Especially discovering Dana Lixenberg's photography was very, very educational, eye-opening for me. So thanks so much for watching, and I can't wait to share more with you. Thank you. Bye.